Hi, Jenni here.
Hi, Joel here.
And it's our 10-year anniversary this week. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
And in light of this event, I thought it would be fun to make a video where we go through Joel's bookshelf and discuss if there are books that interest me and if we have any shared interests in books. As you might notice, the contrast between our shelves is pretty drastic, which might tell you a little bit about Joel's taste in books.
Hey, it's not my fault. It's the fault of all the fantasy writers who decide that they need to have black covers.
Now you spoiled that you like fantasy.
Oh no.
Okay, so we'll go through Joel's bookshelf, shelf by shelf. He'll go through the books that are on those shelves, and then I'll share if I'm interested in them at all. And then at the end, Joel will share what books from my shelves has he enjoyed, because we have read some of my books together.
I have a diverse taste in books, but that's not but that's not reflected on my shelf. I read quite a lot of books from here and there. I am concerned with like quality of writing more than genre of writing, but I do tolerate lesser quality books when it comes to the fantasy genre, which is my favorite genre of books. But I do want to also emphasize the fact that I don't like all fantasy. I have a specific interest on adult fantasy and specifically dark fantasy. And I don't mean that as in dark romantasy or like taboo romantasy, not at all. I mean like fantasy books that deal with real world themes such as like war, colonialism, stuff like that, which sort of like reflects like real world topics.
Would you say that you're leaning more towards, I don't know if this is even a genre, dystopian fantasy or just fantasy with societal commentary? That's
a very interesting way to put it. I think I would lean more towards like societal commentary.
I just came up with a new genre.
Yeah, you did. That is actually a very good thing to say, that one of the most important things when it comes to a book to me is like what it says about society. Like what is the thing that the book is trying to say. So if we now go on to my bookshelves, which are black. No, the shelves are white, as you can see, but the books are black.
So let's start from the first shelf that's up top.
Yes.
What is it about?
Well, that shelf is completely dedicated to my favorite author, Andrzej Sapkowski. Andrzej Sapkowski is a Polish fantasy author who is known for his Witcher series, which is known for the Witcher video games and the Netflix TV show. I played the Witcher games first, as pretty much everybody did, but then I decided that I want to look into the books, and that has sort of highlighted my love for the genre beautifully. If somebody would ask me what is your favorite genre of books, I would say whatever you would call the Witcher books. Like there is magic, there is war, there is societal issues and themes of like societal power and societal control. And also on top of the Witcher series, which I have the whole collection, I also have his Hussite trilogy, which is a very interesting take on like the historical fantasy genre, or like historical fiction genre, which these are stories that take place in like the area that is now Poland in the Middle Ages, if magic was real. So it's like discusses historical events with the caveat that if magic was real.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting.
So what kind of characters are featured in these books? Are they kind of diverse? Are there female characters? Would you recommend Sapkowski's work?
I would definitely recommend Sapkowski's work. The thing about the fantasy genre and all these books, they were written before the 2000s, or some of them were written in the early 2000s. Well, the most recent Witcher book was written in 2013. The problem with a lot of fantasy fiction is that they are not that diverse, like from the perspective of a modern reader. But that's not to say that there are no diverse characters, that there are no female characters. Like female autonomy is a very specific theme that Sapkowski discusses in the Witcher series through the character of Cyrilla and through the characters of the sorceresses. In sort of like the societal system, in the medieval fantasy world societal system, women are a second-class citizens, as they were in real history. But then we have this sort of group of female sorceresses who then take control, take societal power from the men without letting them know about it. So they're sort of playing the men through
Okay,
that.
Barbie.
Yeah. It's definitely not perfect representation, but it would also be false to say that there is absolutely no representation at all.
I mean, there are diversity in fantasy books more so nowadays. However, I feel like a lot of them are also YA books, and we don't really read YA. So I feel like we should, or you should, search more like adult, diverse fantasy books.
Definitely.
My thoughts. Now, I don't think I would ever read Witcher books or any adaptation of them, but I have listened to you all talk about them a lot. I do know Geralt, or Gerald.
Geralt.
However, now that you mentioned the other series that was like historical fiction, I don't know if I can read it because I assume it's going to be very heavy.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know, I like historical fiction, so I'm not like completely shutting it out.
Yeah, so there is sort of this sort of connection there with your interest in historical fiction, which is then connected to my like interest in dark fantasy fiction.
Yeah. On to the next shelf. The second shelf is also dedicated to one author. Who is it?
Well, it's goddamn Tolkien, isn't he?
What do you have from Tolkien?
What do I have from Tolkien? So, of course, I have The Lord of the Rings, both in Finnish and in English. I have actually the new Finnish translation by Kersti Juva, which was released like 2 years ago. The Hobbit, of course, in Finnish and English. And then I have a collection of other texts, also like within the Middle-earth mythos, basically. Different books written by Tolkien and then published by his estate or his son. There are also a couple books there which are written by researchers, like Tolkien researchers, or like literature, language researchers discussing Tolkien's themes and Tolkien's books. And there's the Christmas book, which is letters that Tolkien wrote as Santa Claus to his children. Tolkien was pretty much like my first interest in reading. When I was younger, when I was a kid, I saw my parents reading The Lord of the Rings. I specifically remember that my parents had this one specific cover of The Lord of the Rings, and I was always thinking, what is this book? Well, it's The Lord of the Rings. And then I watched the movies, and I completely fell in love with it with my brother. I've read them a couple of times. I love them. Yeah. We both have an interest in languages and linguistics, so that also like a really interesting point to it. I'm currently writing my master's thesis on fictional languages.
Yeah, inspired by Tolkien.
Tolkien's world building is par excellence. Like there is nobody who's like topped what he did with world building and language building. The books themselves are great. They have a lot of references to historical events, epic fiction, and Arthurian legend and stuff like that from like the Middle Ages. They are a beautiful like an encapsulation of fantastical history told in this very special, very unique way, which then gave birth to the fantasy genre as we know today.
And Tolkien is also the only author that you have books in English and in Finnish, our native language, from. I feel like the rest of your books are just in English. Yeah. So that shows how much his works mean to you. And I've bought you many of these books as a present. Yeah. I think what I want to highlight, it's the really small one. When we were like first together, and I think Joel had his like 18th birthday when we were together. I got this as his birthday present.
I absolutely love it, and I read the story right away. It's like a children's story about a medieval peasant who runs into a dragon, and it's a lovely children's story. It is in English called Farmer Giles of Ham.
A bit different.
Yeah. So it is a bit of a collection. I have not read all the books yet, but I'm planning on reading all of them. They are heavy text. It's not easy to read. Tolkien's writing is quite heavy, but that is to be expected from a master of linguistics of that time.
Exactly. If I'm interested in reading Tolkien, I mean, of course, a little bit, yes, because as Joel mentioned, I also have a master's degree in English. I have mentioned this in so many videos now.
It's your personality.
It is. So, like that linguistic aspect of Tolkien's writing, of course, it interests me, especially since he had such a deep interest in Finnish language. However, once again, topic-wise, fantasy is not my thing. So when I, for example, tried to watch one of the movies, I don't remember which one, probably the first Lord of the Rings, I fell asleep. I'm so sorry. Oh my god, people are unsubscribing right now. I see myself reading something by talking, however, I'm not actively pursuing it. I know I could because of this extensive collection. And I've also heard that at least the Lord of the Rings trilogy, it doesn't have many female characters. So I'm not so actively seeking out to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy because of that.
Yeah, we have like 3 actually like named female characters.
Right.
It's not good.
And also, I think I've mentioned it on this channel, I love the Chronicles of Narnia, and C.S. Lewis and Tolkien were close friends, so that aspect as well is why I'm like slightly interested in Tolkien.
Yeah. To other people, if you're like listening to what Jenni is saying here and you're like resonating with it, I would recommend starting with The Hobbit because it is a very light-hearted children's book.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to the third shelf. A lot going on.
There's a lot going on. My third shelf is dedicated to like other series that I've read and I was interested in. I'm not as meticulous when it comes to my shelf as maybe you are. I keep a lot of books. I should be doing some downsizing. I should do, what's the word you use?
Unhauling.
Unhauling. I should do an unhaul of my shelves. Definitely. There are still some books here that I didn't particularly enjoy. I think I should get rid of them. Yeah, there's a couple like a series here. There's the God Blind series by Anna Stevens, which I did enjoy, but I found it a bit too gory even for my taste. There was a lot of like a pointless violence basically. There is one scene which I read in a public train and I had to put the book down. It was awful. If you've read the books, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Oh gosh. So you would maybe unhaul them?
Maybe, I'm not sure, because that was still a series that I did enjoy.
Okay.
Yeah. Then I've got a couple of Dragon Age books. As previously mentioned, I am a gamer.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of interest in fantasy games also. And what they very often do with fantasy games is they write books as like a accompaniment to the story. So I have a couple of Dragon Age books.
Halo.
Yes, we have Halo books here too. There's one Halo series that I definitely love. It's the Kilo 5 trilogy. Those are like actually good books. They're not just good Halo books. They're actually good sci-fi books.
Interesting.
With themes of colonization and indirect warfare.
Oh.
I have a few Lee Bardugo books. I really enjoyed The Six of Crows and The Crooked Kingdom. I really enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the world. They were definitely very interesting books. And I was not hampered by the fact that they were YA, not at all. They're really good books for like people who are interested in dark fantasy like me. You should look into them. I just don't understand why the characters have to be 16. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. As for if I'm interested in any of these books, no. I'm not a gamer.
Yeah.
I don't care for sci-fi. No. On to the next shelf.
Yes. So my fourth shelf is the rest, basically. I would categorize it as the shelf of literature, basically. So there are...
Literature.
Yes, literature. If we were to consider literature as a genre. I have very complicated thoughts on the concept of genres, but I'm not going to go into there now.
Literary fiction, then.
Literary fiction, yeah. There are like an assortment of books. There's really nothing tying these books together. They were just books that I was interested in and I bought or read. I haven't read all of them yet. Or there are some gifts. Basically books that didn't fit onto the other shelves. There's one interesting book from the shelf, Song of Achilles, which was a book that I absolutely loved.
Can I just say, Joel read that book way before it was popular on TikTok. TikTok did not even exist back then. Joel read it in 2016.
Hipster right here.
You were ahead of the times, and it was already like really praised back then. But it just found such a huge fame and like popularity online when TikTok came around and Greek retellings were really popular. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that one, at least not yet, because I read a book where Achilles was the villain. Yeah. So I don't care for a story where he is the...
Yeah, that's very interesting because Achilles, like within the mythos, he's a dick.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting to see this retelling, but it's a retelling. It's
Exactly.
not the actual like mythological story. It's a new version of the story.
I'm just not ready to see Achilles as the good guy, and it's been a few years since I read The Silence of the Goats.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I did enjoy that. So I bought it when we were going on a cruise.
Yeah, our seniors cruise when we were seniors in high school.
Yeah, so I bought it like a spur of the moment thing. We were like passing by a bookshop and I stopped there and I was like, I'll pick this book up. Then I read it in like 2 days. I've never read a book that quickly. I'm a very slow reader.
Shout out to Song of Achilles.
Yes.
Shout out to Madeline Miller.
Yeah. I have a couple other Madeline Miller books also here. My current absolute favorite book is also on the shelf, House of Leaves by Mark D. Danielewski, which is a esoteric, fourth wall breaking horror novel, academic text. It's too much to explain here, but if you love like weird books, like fourth wall breaking weird books, you should definitely
But
look
not
into
like sexually weird.
Yeah, no. Like ontologically weird.
Like mindfuck.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah. Not like a fuck, but like a mind fuck. Probably my favorite historical author, like a classic author. Well, my favorite classic author is Jane Austen or Tolkien.
Period.
But Shirley Jackson is something that has really like fallen onto my radar and which I'm trying to like read more about. With the origins of, I fell in love with the Netflix show The Haunting of Hill House. I then listened to The Haunting of Hill House. I still haven't found The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson anywhere, but when I will buy it immediately. But then I've read a couple of Shirley Jackson's books and I really love her writing and I really love her like domestic horror
Right.
elements.
Yeah. I've read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson for one of my courses in uni. And I actually have one Shirley Jackson book on my shelf that I haven't read yet. It's Life Among the Savages, which tells the story of like this family and they have to move. And I haven't read it yet, so I don't know much about it. But again, I'm a really sensitive person. So I don't know if I can read Shirley Jackson, like beyond The Lottery and that book. However, I am interested in her.
Yeah, The Lottery was one of her most like directly scary books. There's also a couple Kazuo Ishiguro books which I've enjoyed very much. Yeah, some of them. There are a couple books that I hated almost, but some of Kazuo Ishiguro's writing is really beautiful. Like The Buried Giant and Clara and the Sun were really lovely.
And then the last shelf.
Yes, so my last shelf is miscellaneous.
Yeah, very.
Yeah, it is like basically all the other books, books that I'm not saying that they're bad or that I don't like them. They're just sort of the books that I couldn't really put under the other shelves. They're basically the ones that needed to go somewhere, so they went onto that shelf. I also have my tabletop RPG stuff there. I do like playing a little bit of D&D, and then as you can see on the background, there are some of my manga. I'm not really much of a manga reader or an anime watcher anymore. I was when I was younger in high school. I have, I guess, moved on or something. I never really decided that I will stop watching anime or stop reading manga now, but I just haven't really felt the desire to do so.
It just happened.
It just happened, yeah. But there are some series that I have collected, some series that are very important to me, like Full Metal Alchemist is just awesome. It's not a good manga story, it's just a good story.
Again, there are some books that I gave Joel as presents on this shelf. You know, the book about gaming, and then Spontaneous Acts.
Yeah.
I did not like that book at all. It was way too abstract for me. However, Joel was fine with it.
I mean, I still don't get it, but I didn't hate it.
Did we just go through your shelf? I feel like this is way more detailed than my bookshelf.
And we didn't even go through like every single book.
Right.
I just love yapping.
Yeah. Right, so now you get to yap even more.
Let's go.
So we read some books from my shelves, and then there are books that like we both absolutely love, but they are on my shelf because I bought them. Mention a few of those that you have enjoyed from my shelves.
Well, I've definitely fallen in love with Jane Austen's writing. Yeah.
Exactly.
I am going to steal some of the copies onto my shelf.
No!
Yeah, I love Jane Austen. I've also loved your Hunger Games collection.
Yeah, Joel hadn't read the Hunger Games before he met me, but he read then my copies.
I hadn't even watched the movies either.
That's crazy.
I am currently, as of filming this video, just about to finish Sunrise on the Reaping. And I stole that from your shelf also. I loved Babel by R.F. Kuang. I absolutely loved that. Also, like from the perspective, which was interesting because you really, really liked it too.
Yeah, which is wild because it's so opposite to what... Like, I'm just too sensitive. But, like, it was to, like, things that happened there. It was very dystopian, very, like, dark fantasy.
Yeah.
However, it was just so well written.
Exactly. That's so interesting because you loved it, and that was, like, a connection for us because it had the sort of the language things that we love about literature, and it also had a lot of these dark fantasy themes that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
So it felt like reading a dark fantasy book.
Yeah. And because I wasn't used to reading fantasy, there were some aspects to it that I had to like ask you all to explain to me because my brain couldn't really like understand what was happening.
Yeah.
But that didn't take away from the reading experience. And translation is always an act of betrayal.
Yes.
Ni vittu.
It's very interesting to see because I could like identify fantasy genre elements, so I could be like, oh, this is such an interesting magic system, whereas you were just reading the book like, oh, that's interesting, that translates is sort of like magic.
Right, and like the commentary on colonization.
Yeah.
And, you know, everything that comes with that. You even quoted the book for one assignment in uni.
Yeah, I was doing a translation assignment for uni, so I used the quote from the back of the book that every act of translation is an act of betrayal, and I think my professor enjoyed it because he gave me a good score. Yeah. Referring back to what I said about me like being like an omni-reader, I guess.
Omni-reader.
Like an omnivore. I am pretty much interested in everything in Jenni's shelves.
Period.
I know Jenni really, really well, so I sort of know that if the story is something that she gravitates towards, there is something that interests me also, because I know that you have a much more sort of a defined palette than I do. Yeah, when it comes to art or things like that. So I can like very easily identify, okay, there is something very interesting to take out of the story if it like catches your attention as well.
Period. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video where we went through Joel's bookshelf. If you want to see more book updates from me, follow me on Bookstagram at jenskosmos. And I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!
Bye!